Hello everyone, here is Mark. Welcome to my channel. Tonight we'll grab a cup of joe because we've got a gritty new story for you. This tale is a wild reimagining set deep in the decaying rust belt of the American Midwest. Think a fictionalized version of Detroit or Gary, Indiana. It perfectly captures that heavy, oppressive vibe where the rusted skeletons of our industrial past collide head-on with a new digital present. We follow working-class folks like old-school union man Arthur Vance and the overcrowded Miller family just scraping by in the shadows of giant machinery. You won't want to miss it. If you like it, don't forget click like and subscribe button. Now the story begins.
This adaptation reimagines the story within the decaying, rust belt of the American Midwest, specifically a fictionalized version of Detroit or Gary, Indiana, where the skeleton of the industrial past looms over the digital present. The heat in the Midwest doesn't just sit, it oppresses. In the summer of 1979, Silas Miller made his first appearance at the Vance household, wearing bell-bottom jeans and a floral leather belt that seemed to scream for attention. Arthur Vance, a man whose soul was etched with the ink and grease of the city's largest printing press, was not impressed. To Arthur, Silas was just the eldest son of Leo Miller, a man who had once been Arthur's apprentice and had eventually been swallowed by the same machinery that now fed them. The Millers lived in a cramped, two-story colonial directly behind the Vance's brick house, separated only by a narrow alleyway. Beyond that lay Liberty Square, a patch of concrete that had once been a pristine park built by the city's founding industrialists. Legend had it that the square once housed a magnificent pigeon coop, a gift from a European architect. The locals, in the desperation of the Great Depression, had trapped and eaten the birds within a week. When the city tried to replenish them, armed guards were posted to protect the civic beauty. By the late 60s, a massive bronze statue of a faceless industrial worker was erected in the center, and the pigeons fled for good. The Millers lived in a house that felt like a biological experiment in overcrowding. Leo Silas's father had built a series of illegal lofts and suspended platforms within the high-ceilinged rooms. 11 people lived there, stacked like cordwood. The men slept in the sky berths near the ceiling. The women occupied the floor. Arthur Vance despised the Millers, partly for their chaos, but mostly because he remembered Silas's father as a man who traded his dignity for a title. Arthur was an old-school union man, a veteran of the great strikes. He had lost an eye during a scuffle with scabs in the late 40s, earning him the nickname Cyclops Arthur. He was a man of the press, a master of lithography who could tell the quality of paper by the way it tore. Arthur's daughter, Evelyn, was 23 and worked at the local transformer plant. She wasn't a beauty by traditional standards. Her teeth were slightly crowded, and her eyes were a bit too wide. But she possessed a tongue that could talk a bird out of a tree. It was this silver, tongued wit that had convinced the factory doctors she had a chronic respiratory ailment, allowing her to avoid the heavy lifting and move into clerical work early on. Yet, on that afternoon in 1979, Evelyn sat uncharacteristically silent next to Silas Miller. She watched her sister, Sarah, pour tea for the boy with the bell-bottoms, her eyes darting nervously toward Arthur's heavy, furrowed brow. Silas sipped his tea, his deep-set eyes, almost hauntingly like his father's, scanning the room. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a handkerchief, and meticulously wiped the edge of his chair before sitting down. "I hear you're at the aerospace plant now," Sarah said, trying to break the ice. "I am," Silas replied, his voice thin but steady. "I'm in the parachute division. We're working on new deployment mechanisms. I actually designed a modification that shaves 3 seconds off the opening time." Arthur let out a cynical grunt. "Designing is one thing. Being the one at the end of the rope is another." "I tested it myself, Mr. Vance," Silas said quietly. "At 5,000 feet. The latch jammed on the first drop. I was in a free fall for longer than I'd like to admit. Ended up in a pine tree 3 miles off target. But the second time, I felt like I was walking on air." Evelyn's eyes shimmered. To her, Silas wasn't just a neighbor boy. He was a man who saw the sky as an exit strategy. 30 years later, the industrial worker statue in Liberty Square was covered in graffiti, and the Midwest was more rust than belt. Leo Miller, Silas's father, had died years ago. He had bathed all 9 of his children, tucked them in, and then climbed into one of his own sky berths to hang himself from a crossbeam. He left behind a family of dreamers and a mountain of debt. I am Arthur's grandson, Julian. I live in a shoebox apartment in Brooklyn, working as a junior compliance officer for a global bank. I am the success story of the Vance family, the one who got out. But getting out didn't mean I was free. It just meant my debts were in a different currency. My Aunt Sarah called me on a Tuesday morning. Her voice, thick with a Missouri drawl that I had spent years trying to scrub from my own speech, sounded panicked. Julian, Silas is gone, and your cousin, Marcus, is gone with him. Marcus was Silas's son. He was a 30-something shadow of a man who had spent his life drifting between gambling dens and predatory lending offices. He had a talent for billiards and an even greater talent for disappointing his mother, Evelyn. What do you mean gone? I asked, rubbing my eyes. They went out for coffee last Friday and never came back. Silas owes money to half the neighborhood. Neighbors are banging on Evelyn's door at 3 in the morning. And Julian, Marcus took the deed to the house. I sighed, looking at the stacks of contracts on my desk. Aunt Sarah, I'm a lawyer, not a private investigator. You're the only one with a head on his shoulders, Julian. Your grandfather always said Silas wasn't right in the head, but he respected him for something. Find them. If Evelyn loses that house, she's on the street. I took a week of vacation, the first in 3 years, and flew back to the grey skies of my youth. Oh, the town felt smaller, like a wool sweater washed too hot. I visited my Aunt Evelyn. She had shrunk into a fragile version of herself, her hands gnarled by rheumatoid arthritis. She sat in a room that smelled of lavender and old paper, staring at a massive, rusted chimney of an old smelting plant, visible through her window. That chimney, she whispered, her eyes unfocused. It's a curse, Julian. It blocks the light. Silas used to say that as long as that chimney stood, we were just ants in its shadow. She told me Marcus had been frequenting a dive called 58 Ball Lounge. The lounge was a dim cavern of neon light and stale beer. The owner, a man named Big Al, pointed me toward a girl in the corner with bleached blonde hair and a phone encrusted with fake diamonds. Her name was Roxy. Marcus, yeah, I know him, Roxy said, filing a nail. He's been sick, you know, not fever sick. The world is too heavy sick. Clinical depression, they call it. He couldn't get the money for the house, and his girlfriend, the girl who works at the jewelry counter downtown, gave him an ultimatum: buy a house or get lost. He chose to get lost. Where is he? Roxy. She looked at me, her expression softening. He's with his old man. Silas has been building something in a warehouse near the old docks, something crazy. Marcus went there too. I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to see if his dad could actually fly. Nee. I found the warehouse at midnight. It was a cavernous space that smelled of kerosene industrial glue. In the center, illuminated by a single, flickering halogen lamp, was a massive wicker basket attached to a patchwork envelope of nylon and silk. Silas Miller stood there, looking like a wizened wizard. He was 70 now, wearing an oversized flight jacket and a pair of white trousers that looked pristine despite the grime of the warehouse. Julian, he said, not at all surprised to see me. You have your grandfather's eye. Just the one that worked, though. Silas, you have to come home, I said, my voice echoing. The neighbors, the debt, the deed. Marcus took the house deed, Silas. Marcus stepped out from behind the balloon, a bandage wrapped around his neck. He looked pale, his eyes devoid of the spark I remembered from our childhood. I tried to kill myself, Julian, Marcus said, his voice a gravelly whisper. I couldn't buy the house. I couldn't be the man she wanted. But Dad says we don't need houses where we're going. Silas walked over to me. He looked up at the balloon, which was slowly inflating with a roar of a propane burner. "I've spent 40 years on this, Julian. I called it the Foodie Portable Aviator. Your father, Arthur's son, he actually helped me sneak parts out of the factory back in the 90s. He believed in it. He knew that the only way to survive a place like this is to look up. You can't fly a hot air balloon to South America, Silas," I said, the logic of my banking world clashing with the madness in front of me. "You'll crash. You'll freeze." "Maybe," Silas smiled, and for a second I saw the boy in the bell-bottoms again. "But did you know that parachutes were originally designed to save people from burning buildings? I'm just taking the long way down. I've rigged us to stay aloft for a month. We have supplies. We have the wind." He climbed into the basket, helping Marcus inside. There were others there too. Silas's younger brother, who was in a wheelchair, and a couple of other shadows of men I didn't recognize. The lost souls of the Millers. "Tell Evelyn I haven't forgotten her," Silas shouted over the roar of the flame. "Tell her the chimney can't reach us up there." The balloon began to lift, scraping against the warehouse rafters before gliding out through the massive, rusted doors into the cool night air. I watched it rise, a flickering, orange, spark against the oppressive grey of the city. Ooh. I stood in the empty warehouse for a long time, in Marcus's old jacket, which he'd left on a crate. I found a deed to the house. He hadn't sold it. He'd redeemed it with his last cent and left it for me to find. I returned to my aunt's house. I didn't tell her about South America. I told her Silas and Marcus had gone down south for a business opportunity, and that they'd sent the deed back as a sign of good faith. That night, I climbed up the old ladder to the roof of the Vance house, just like my father used to do when he was overwhelmed. I sat on the shingles, looking out over the flickering lights of the town. I thought about my life in New York, the subway rides, the spreadsheets, the endless cycle of earning to pay for the right to earn more. I looked at the dark sky, searching for a spark of orange flame, a patchwork of silk, a man who refused to be held down by the gravity of debt. I realized then that my father was right. To live a life isn't just to walk across a field. Sometimes it's about finding a way to jump, even when you know there's no pine tree at the bottom to catch you. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel the weight of the world. I felt the wind.
Well, that's tonight's story. If you like it, click like and subscribe button. Next, we'll listen to some music. It's from Fiona Joy Hawkins' Portrait of a Waterfall. It's been described as music to dream to. That's what I wish for. Have a good night.